Hi, my name is Antonella Di Giulio, and welcome to Web Piano Academy. In this live stream on Web Piano Academy, we will have as a guest speaker Dr. Martin Weir. Dr. Martin Weir has enjoyed teaching and performing percussion for over 35 years. He currently resides in the Buffalo area with his wife and two children. He has performed locally, he has performed commissioner pieces, his own solo concert, and with the Buffalo Philharmonic as well. As a teacher, he has his own private studio and teaches private and group classes at the Buffalo Community Music School. He has taught music from kindergarten to the collegiate level, including at Asbury College, Transylvania University, and Eastern Kentucky University. And he has also been a clinician nationally. He studied at Northern Kentucky University, Berklee College of Music, Miami University, and the University of Kentucky. So today we will talk with Dr. Martin Weir about how we can teach private lessons through organic methods. And here we go with our Hi.
Hello. Good to see you.
So, now let's talk a little bit about what you do, and then how you started studying percussions, and why, when, throughout your career first, so that we have an idea about who we are talking to and what you do.
Certainly. I have thought about this and realized after the fact that in my early days, I'm the seventh of 7 children, and we'd be all lined up in the church pew, and some big brother or sister would go to the correct page, and hand me the book, just so I'd shut up. I mean, I was too young to read. I didn't read yet, but I remember watching the dots, and I figured, oh, this is what they're doing. Okay. And I noticed that the empty dots went longer, and the filled in dots went faster. And looking back, I realized I was figuring out how to read. It goes up and it goes down, just like my voice when I'm trying, even though I didn't know the words. So it was a great advantage at 3, 4, before I realized it.
What instrument were your sister brothers playing?
Most of them. So it was trombone, cornet. My father was a musician, and he was a baritone voice, and he also played trombone. But throughout his life, he did a lot of musical theater as a baritone voice. So he had the lead in He was Captain Von Trapp. He was, all the King and the King and I. And later on, as I got older, I was playing in the pit, playing percussion in the pit with my dad on stage. That was kind of a unique bond that we had. I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
So basically, your family was creating the environment for you to become a musician, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So natural environment for growing musicians.
Little did I know.
Yes.
Yeah. It was a good in a good situation to be in, because I was never told, no, you can't do this. You are not good enough to do this, or you need to be a doctor or lawyer or something like that. I just went this way. Well, yeah, I guess I am a doctor. I did do that.
Yeah.
So my first real musical experience was I was in a boys choir. I was an alto, so it was before my voice changed. The hardest thing that I didn't understand was I was harmony, and why don't I get the melody? But I eventually got there, with a lot of probably pulling hairs from the director. But that was a good experience. But then when I got old enough to get into an ensemble, I played drums only because my closest brother did, and he was out after 2 years, I think. But I went in, and it filled me. Just something about the repetitive rhythm inside me. It filled me with joy. I hadn't had that experience yet, and my voice wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. Yeah. So I went there and haven't stopped since.
How old were you when you started percussion stuff?
I was, let's see, it would have been, I was 10 years old. It was older, but I had already been in the choir, the boys choir and all that. So I was just after 4th grade that I started. So it would have been 10 years old. And they were very patient. All I had was a drum pad until, for about 6-8 years before I had anything louder. So it was, and eventually they gave in, and I got more percussion. And now I have in my basement 2 rooms full of everything you can imagine.
Right. So when I think when students or young people think about percussions, they only think about the drum set, right? So that's right. What we know. So how was your idea back then? About what you were going to play then later.
My influence wasn't all about drum set. It was there, but I was in a concert band in school, and I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't until I got into high school, so 9th grade, 10th grade, really, my sophomore year, that jazz band was included in the curriculum. It was an after-school activity. I really like this. So, but by the time I got there to sit down and play, it just came naturally. Not that I am some prodigy, but I had so much rhythmic training that to sit down and use my foot instead of my hand, it was fine. So I was never really turned on by the drum set as much as I was being able to make music with a larger group. Right. And that's the communication that I had never experienced, and I loved it.
Yes. How do you think, knowing now that you had that kind of background in the family, I think that has influenced a lot the way that you perceive drums, right? Right now. Yeah. It's just like it makes a huge difference to
it really does.
Yeah. Such musical experiences. Yeah, it's being lucky, right? That you are immersed in kind of a musical environment since you were born.
Yes.
Rather than. So and then how did you decide that you wanted to be a musician? Or did you decide at one point? Or so was it?
I did. So
I wanted to be a scientist. I didn't want to be a musician. So when I was little, I wanted to be a scientist. Kind of. I am a scientist, sort of, right? But, so in a different field, obviously. But yeah.
I felt that most of what I was doing, I did have other interests, but most of what I was doing was all around music. But because, again, my sophomore year, I was already playing paid musical gigs, playing pit orchestras. And so I really liked it. And I loved it, again, the interaction. So I knew I wanted to pursue music.
Yeah.
When I got to be, junior, senior, to think, okay, what are you going to do after you leave this high school? I went towards music and in percussion, and I wasn't sure what else I could do, really. I wanted to do some other things, but if I were to do like a history teacher, I loved history. If I were to do that, I don't think I had the faith in myself. And where do you go for a group of historians hanging out together? It's
right.
Maybe the coffee shop. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I had a better feeling down deep that this was where I needed to go.
Yeah, but it also takes so much of your time, right? When you really want to be a musician at one point, it takes so much of your time out of your day. I don't know. I remember when I was in high school, I just I just time to practice. I didn't have time for anything else, right? So, because that was your passion, but it also requires some sacrifice, some dedication, because you really need to practice hours. And I don't know, if that was your case, but back in Italy, if you are in the conservatory, they expect you to practice a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can recall in high school, there was just a lot of activity, and I was in as many ensembles as I could be in.
Right.
And I would have time to go home, sometimes do my homework, even though I said I did it all the time, grab a bite to eat, and I'm back up at school for a rehearsal of some sort. And in that short time at home, I was already thinking, okay, here's what I've got to play. Can I play this? Is there some part that I don't get? Or is there some part that I need to hear what's going on so I can understand it better? So it is. It's not only is it time alone, it's time with the other group in my case, but it's time away from the instrument, but you and your brain trying to figure out the music.
I remember when I was practicing in high school, right? My main concern was like, finish your homework as fast as possible. Sometimes I just worked on my homework while I was in school, right? In the classroom.
Yes.
Like I anticipated all the homework so that I did have time then later, to practice or for, rehearsals or things like that, right? Concerts, competitions, whatever I was doing. So it's I think it requires a lot of, the attitude that you should have is a little bit different, and it really requires your focus to be towards music rather than,
Right. I agree. And if I don't remember it being, there are commercials of some young boy having to stay inside, practice piano, and outside the window is all his friends playing, and he's that never happened because my passion would put me there. I was in my room having a wonderful time exploring rhythm, exploring tone, so it wasn't the time was real. I had to put in those hours. I didn't just get better by picking up drumsticks or sitting at a piano, but I put in the time because my passion put me there.
Right.
Nothing made the hours disappear.
I think I had the same kind of feeling. I never had the feeling that, I was really annoyed if somebody would come to my house and say, "Hey, do you want to come there?" I was like, "I know, I have to practice. Why are you asking me that?" Right? So I think it's just like the attitude, the overall attitude of those who really want to become musicians is different than a sacrifice. Oh, I'm sacrificing myself. No, it's not. It's a joy. Like you want to achieve that goal, right?
Exactly.
You want to play that piece perfectly, and you really want to practice, right? So so now you have a doctorate degree in percussion, right?
Yes.
DMA. So how was that decision? Like, it's not that everybody has it, right? So what brought you?
Yeah. Here's what I've discovered. I have had a lunch with a conductor of an orchestra, and we were talking about a score, and we were talking about a passage in a light passage where the oboe is doing something, and I was speaking about that and the lilt, and they were really surprised that I could speak musically, even though I play percussion, because there's so many just drummers out there. So I think the difference was that I was asked to be a musician first to get my doctorate. I was asked to be a musician first, and my instrument happened to be percussion. And it wasn't, well, I'm playing percussion, so I don't have to think, pardon me, sorry. I don't have to think about anything else
Right.
that is going on. I had to understand full orchestra. I had to understand, be able to explain from pre-Renaissance, early church music to today, how that developed.
Right.
Really did not include much percussion until the very end.
Yeah,
So, and it was still, I was passionate about it. To open up, you've done this probably, you just open up a score, you have no idea who it is, but you have to look at it and find out, okay, this looks, it's romantic because of this. Oh, okay. Yes, this is Rachmaninoff, because I figured,
right.
as long as I could explain why.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah, at times I don't really know why I know certain things. I think it's because of the of all the repertoire that I played over time. Just open this go, oh, that's Mozart, like without knowing what it is, right? But because of of the time that you spent with those composers, it is the same as recognizing a language that you heard in the past, maybe, right? So if I hear somebody speaking French, then I know, oh, that's French, because I know that's French. I don't really know how to speak French, but I know that's French, right? Because I heard it before, and it's the same for music, probably, right? So what was your kind of your recital? So what was your main point of in your doctoral studies? What was your kind of I know that you have to play final recital, right? But
yes, I had to do 4 recitals and a lecture recital, so 5 recitals.
Right. What was your main focus in the lecture recitals?
The main focus in the lecture recital was a lady who had played marimba, which is the huge xylophone, played marimba all over the world, I don't think she played Antarctica, the inhabited continent, and she played Carnegie Hall with a concerto that she commissioned. So I was just enthralled with all that she had done and just how cleanly she played her music and how did she get there. So I wanted to figure out her pedagogy. How did she taught herself so much. And so the focus was on this lady, what she had done. And I would talk about how this piece, which some of them are well known in my circles, how this piece came to be. And then I would perform a little bit of that piece. Then I would talk about the next piece. So there's 2 concerti and just a solo etude that were written for her that I played and spoke about. So I had to narrow that down. My original focus, my original desire to go there was how did she get to be so accurate and so fast? What method did she use? Well, it was her pedagogy, and I had to go with a performance aspect because that was my, I was a performance major, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So basically, your research was already based on how you teach yourself certain things, right? Or how you learn things. Our talk today is about these organic methods.
Yes.
And maybe you can explain better what you mean with that, and then how you teach your students, and how it is this teaching more effective than some of the kind of methods that we find out there.
Right. So before I say that, the reason I chose University of Kentucky was for the percussion teacher there, who had an incredible track record of teaching at a high level. And I wanted to know, how do you do that? So my focus not in the doctoral recital, but overall was pedagogy. I took theory pedagogy while there. So I wanted to understand how to be the better teacher, selfishly for myself, but also just to be able to pass that along. So my approach to teaching my students is, first of all, knowing lots and lots of literature, and both solo and method book and and outside sources to be able to start where they are, give that, understand their strengths and help them understand they have these strengths, and then start leading them where their passion goes. Yeah. And I as long as I don't put out the passion, as long as I don't, dismantle their passion, I think I'm going in the right direction. Then I try and open up their mind to the totality of what all is available to them, instead of just learning drum set. In my case, usually it's just drum set, and I try and open their mind to the rest of the world of percussion, and instead of saying, well, here's the book that I go out of, learn this book and we'll go through it together, and it's so limiting. I've had that, I've experienced it, I didn't like it.
Yeah, so I never had the experience. I think in Italy they are not so focused on method books, at least they weren't. I don't know now, but they weren't focused on method books. But I know that the teacher always decided according to my own inclinations and just things that I wanted, things that I needed. Then I was given some certain pieces, and then at one point I started deciding for myself. Because I was listening to a lot of colleagues. I would like to play this piece. I went out, bought the score, and I started practicing that, especially during the summer because I had more time. So I know that many teachers usually, maybe because they're unsure, because they don't know if they're doing the right thing or not, they keep following method books, and at one point some books are maybe too fast for some students, some books are too slow, some books are less interesting. How do you do that? How do you decide what is the right thing for each student?
So I do not choose what their book is going to be in the first few lessons. There's plenty to go on that we can just talk about. I do require that they have a notebook to write down, and I'll write in there often. But so once I get an understanding of, are they an oral learner? Are they a kinetic learner? Are they a visual learner? They may not know that, but I can just trying different things. That I have an idea of what works best, and then again, understanding all the literature that's out there, I can choose certain pieces, certain books, method books, again, like you said, move really fast. So an older student who knows a lot, but we just need to go back and check from the beginning, that's going to be a good choice for that person. But to give that same book to a 10-year-old, they would be blown away. They would just be too far deep in really fast. So I'll sometimes use 2 or 3 books that I choose out of. They're going to buy the main one, but then I'll supplement either with my own. I just print out a sheet, or we're going to do page 5 out of this book instead today, because it gives more depth in a single issue rather than. So I take the time to get to know the students and their pace, and I also want to help them understand that their pace of learning isn't a choice they have. If they learn at this pace, that's what you've got. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to be smarter. It doesn't. It's okay. My eyes are going to be brown now. You can't really do that. Have patience with yourself and understand that you are going to have, you're going to be fine, but you have to have patience with yourself.
Right. It's a journey of self-improvement, basically, when you play an instrument, right? You're kind of improving yourself over time. You cannot compare yourself to others, because mostly, I don't know if I've noticed in your students, but if I start my students when they are 3 or 4, so a 3 years old has a limited amount of experiences, and
Right.
not every kid has had the same experiences at that point. So some of them may know a little bit more, some of them may know a little bit less, and then you start from that kind of background, and then you need to build up. So if a kid has not noticed at that point that he has 5 fingers, right? You first
Yeah.
have to really make sure that he notices. So we have 5 fingers. So those are the basic things. But I do believe, so according to my experiences, that it doesn't really matter what kind of book you use, right? You can use any kind of book, but the basics that we teach in any kind of instrument, they're the same, right? So you have to have a nice hand position. You have to, for example, for piano now, you have to play chords. You have to be able to know how to play a scale. You know how the fingers, the thumb will go down. How to play an arpeggio. You know how to put right hand and left hand together in different patterns, and how to read music. So there are basic things that you have to know, and then it doesn't really matter what kind of pieces you are playing at one point, as long as you are really kind of learning this kind of basic skills, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what are the skills that you teach to your students? Percussion is very different than piano, so I never took percussion lessons in my life, so I don't know.
It is kind of like what you said, and I'd said that I don't necessarily pick a book right away, because all the stuff that I've got to teach, you don't have to look at a book to say, okay, you've got to put your hand nice and relaxed on the keys. That's not a book. So I talk about where the balance is in a stick. My stick usually looks less like a pen, but where the balance point is and how I'm going to use my hand, it really is similar to a nice light approach to piano. Instead of gripping this thing and they'll try and do this. So we got to do work on this and understanding what moves the stick and not, using the whole arm. So now that I think about it, it is very similar, minus having something in your hand, but it's got to be nice and loose. And I don't worry about what method they're going to do, because there's so much. I need to know that, even if they don't have all their fingers, which I've not had that situation yet, but their right and their left, which hand do they, and they sometimes at a young age don't write yet. But which hand I'll hand them a book, or hand them the sticks, and which hand do they grab with? Which hand do they like to open a door with, or open the refrigerator with? Something that they can, I do this hand. So we can talk about hand dominance without them even having to know their right from their left.
Right.
And then we work on equality of hands. I talk about hand equality, even though sometimes we use our big hand, I call it, or my strong hand, to pick up stuff. I want to be able to do anything with either hand in drumming, because it sounds the same, and I'll make an example of that. So the idea is, the only thing that I don't have to worry about is trying to put the right with the left. I mean, it's sometimes there, but trying to do one thing and then doing this. I am glad I don't have to worry about teaching that, because that's.
I was working on the next video for this YouTube channel, and it's just exactly about that, about how we play with both hands, and how that playing with both hands over the ears will build more connections between your right and left hemisphere of the brain, and the corpus callosum has more and more connections, which make pianists think differently, sort of, right? Having more focus on certain things, requiring less energy to focus. So it is an advantage, but it takes a long time to learn.
That's not a 2-week subject. Right.
No, not at all. And not a thing that you can learn really kind of by watching one YouTube video at a time. So this doesn't work that way. It works over the years. I'm still learning it. But I think that you were talking about, all those kind of small things that you teach to your students that then will make a difference in the way they play, right? And that, I think it's so important to have that basis right from the beginning. So I noticed from my students that if they start with me, they have a nice hand position because I insist in that, right? I insist in hand relaxation, arm relaxation, that the shoulders are down, that they sit properly. And these things at the beginning are more important, way more important than, whatever piece they are playing. Because as long as you learn how to do that, then you can play any piece, it's fine. It will be fine, right? Yeah. So, and I know that makes a huge difference. Then, if you have started in a different way, then you have to relearn it and to retrain yourself. It takes much longer, right? So
it's harder to do that, yeah.
Right. So, is it the same for percussion? So, did you have the experience that you got students from that had played kind of in the wrong way, and then you had to kind of retrain them? Does it take longer, or kind of is it?
It does, and it's more frustrating for the student. What I've done, in one case, when they're holding the sticks, they're holding them and they're really tight, and that's just the way they've, had, you buy your kids some drumsticks and they can play on stuff, right? I just leave the drumsticks out of it, and we just play. I've got hand drums, congas, and we just play on that to get a nice loose approach. And then I can reintroduce the sticks with that loose approach. So unfortunately, that's, unless you want to have a conga in your studio, but that's what I've used. And the other thing, really, older students in a high school or upper middle school situation, they've written in every letter of every note on for like a xylophone piece. And if they write one note wrong, it's guaranteed they're going to play it wrong every time. And 9 times out of 10, that's the case.
How difficult is it to read music? How difficult is it?
Even, the first note, that's a B. I always miss that. Write B, okay. But then it goes B, A, B, A. They're going to write B, A, B. Really? Come on.
No, yes.
No. And they'll write every single note, not just, that's a way up jump. How many letters?
I don't know. I don't know why students at times consider music reading such a mystery. It's just, it requires a little bit patience at the beginning, right? To figure out the notes. But then it is more rewarding if you learn it, right? And you read right away, and you force yourself to read slowly, and it takes time. Everything takes time, right? And then if you write down the letters, which I find, I had a student time ago, and obviously at the piano we have 88 keys, right? So we don't have just 7 notes that you just play. You write it A and you play the right A at the piano, right? There are different octaves. And I had this student, she kept writing these letters under the note, and I couldn't take this habit away until she figured that she was always playing wrong because of that. I said, you know what? You have to get rid of them because it just doesn't bring anything. You are not learning.
This A up here versus this A down here. Or
yeah, because then you read the letters instead of reading the notes, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it is very, very difficult. So how is your feeling about? I have the feeling myself as a piano teacher, piano instructor, and despite I have a PhD in music, I have the impression that sometimes parents don't really distinguish somebody who is a professional musician, who has that training, who has studied how to teach students and what to teach, and then obviously you improve yourself as well, and you're at a certain level. From my neighbor teaching piano, maybe my neighbor doesn't teach piano, but do you have the impression that it's difficult for parents to distinguish really, that That's somebody who has a degree in music is different than somebody who hasn't a degree in music. Not because sometimes not because of the quality of their playing, but really of the understanding and how you teach, what to teach, and the quality of really kind of the teaching experience overall. I have the impression that, I mean, I would waste my money if I would send my kids to somebody who can barely play something, because I was like, it's just like, it's almost a waste of time and money at the same time, right? Because you learn the wrong things. I don't know.
And also, you're probably rewarding that person incorrectly. They're thinking, I'm good, so I'm going to get money for doing this. Yeah, I certainly have had. Imagine anybody who at 16 gets themselves a drum set and they're playing, and then they're 22 or so, and little Johnny's wanting to get and they go to this guy who's not really had any education except playing on his own, and has no idea how to teach, what ways to approach. And it's more like I've spoken with a couple of teachers like in that situation, and this person is saying, I don't teach the young ones very well. I don't like doing that. So, and my thought is, well, that means you're really not that, don't have that wide a variety of teaching ability, because I should be able to teach what I do because I know it in depth enough to anybody. And I just have to have the words to be able to talk to somebody who's 40. I've taught vibraphone chords and playing, to an older student, an adult student. And I could speak with that person versus talking to a 5-year-old who wants to just begin drums. I can speak to that person. That's my teaching ability. That's not my playing ability.
Right.
Because I played for 5 years on drum set, I could teach this person a song, but it is such a different world. But now to convince that person that their teaching is not quite the same as my teaching, I don't know that I could, and nor would I want to go down that road.
No. But it is, for parents, it's so very difficult to kind of really distinguish that, because how do you want to know, right? If people don't know what music, how you teach music, right? So you don't really know. Oh, okay. Oh, I have this little girl. She's so nice. She's teaching piano. This guy, he's a good drummer. So you can go there and can learn from him. But most of the time, I realized these people don't really. I had a student coming to me talking about the bass clef as the left hand clef. I was like, no, it's not a left hand clef. It's just like a bass clef. That means that's just, you play the piano in this area of the piano, not just with the left hand, right? So the student was saying the bass clef, it was the left hand. It was like, no, it's not always the left hand. So you give this wrong information to students, and it is simply then wrong, because you're teaching wrong things, right?
Or limited scope, even,
Right. How is the approach that you have with parents when you explain the importance, for example, of being relaxed? Do they really get it that you're working on those things, or they just expect the kids to play some pieces or to show off?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, actually, I just had this week a young student. He's really talented. He's 5.
Yeah.
A lot of natural talent to be able to put things together, do it. But at the end, I taught him over the summer, and I'm teaching him through December. And the parent asked if they know it yet, and is there a diploma for this? He's, it's what, maybe not 5 months altogether of learning, and if they know it yet, and is there a diploma to go with it? And patiently, I had to explain that I'm still learning. It's not but I'd be happy to make him a diploma for having finished this semester of lessons, but it's not going to be, that's not going to be all there is. There's so much more. And I think, unfortunately, it's the father who wants to see this, and he's got to go play this. And it's the mother who comes to the lesson, who I speak to. So I'm yeah, it happens. And I just tell them it's like, you can't just put a cake in for 30 minutes into the oven and it comes out. It's not the same. If it takes, 2 hours for that particular cake, it's going to be 2 hours. If it takes 2 weeks to learn one item, it's going to be 2 weeks. It's not going to happen faster just because you want it faster. And if it takes 10 years for me to understand how to play, a major scale or a concerto that I like, it's going to take that long, so the explanation is all I can do, but the answer they want isn't something I can provide. They want the answer that, 5 more weeks and he's good. I just gotta, order in a new part here for the car. And
I think that at one point, as teachers, as professional teachers, we can put as much work as we want into teaching a student, but then at the very end, is the student, and if they're kids, the parents who have really the responsibility to create that environment that you and I had, right? That was nurturing and was encouraging and was motivating, and there weren't that many expectations, just you put the work in and you have the right attitude, that all those elements that as teachers, we can provide them. We kind of really limited in what we can say to students at one point. So I tried in the past, because I use the Suzuki method. The Suzuki method is supposed to include parents, but it works if parents want to work with.
They have to work it,
kids, right? And it doesn't work if they don't. So at that point, you cannot do much. You just do what you can with what you have, and it's a little bit limiting. So what kind of now? What is the sequence that you use, like the basic skills that your students learn, over time, that you follow sort of? I know that I teach first this, and I know that my students, regardless the pieces they are playing, I want them to learn certain things. And my lessons, for example, are divided into, technique, piano technique, etudes, note reading, sight reading, and pieces. So that's my kind of pattern in kind of during the lesson and how I teach. And then for each kind of subject, I have a kind of a timeline for the students, right? Certain goals that they have to reach at a certain point, which they don't know right away, right? They don't know why they're doing what they're doing, but I know that. So what is your kind of your the kind of patterns that you use with your students, and what kind of skills they learn over time? What is a timeline?
Yeah. So, oddly enough, it has to be, again, an organic approach.
Right.
But so first thing I want to do is get them, if they can understand hand to hand, and then different rhythms in each hand that might be one over top of another. But in the areas, I kind of have a mental rubric in my head of there's orchestral percussion, so just snare and going on into this stuff. Then there's keyboard percussion, so they're going to learn this, and then multi-mallet, which is you're holding 4 mallets, sometimes even 6 mallets in your hands.
That's amazing.
And then into hand percussion, and then multi and drum set. Multi percussion is a lot of times modern orchestras, because they used to hire one person for every different instrument, like triangle. You're going to play triangle, you're going to play tambourine, and then money ran out. That was the Romantic era. Money ran out, so you're going to play all those now. So learning how to do that, and that's my rubric. Then I have different levels. So that's similar to what you expect. But if somebody is stronger in mallet, then I like to start there and move them towards. I just work on, can they get this? Because a lot of times if somebody is stronger in the mallet area, in the xylophone and vibraphone area, then their technique suffers because they're really pointing at buttons. And imagine you have two fingers and you're going to try and teach somebody piano. It's not going to work very well. So so we work on starting where they know, and then I move towards just a drum pad and getting this, and then eventually blend them together.
So when you learn percussions, it is almost like learning several instruments at the same time, right? You can learn this. It's still rhythm, but there are also notes, right? If you play the xylophones and all those things. But how is your approach in teaching? Rhythm is very important, right, for percussionists. Reading rhythm and reading notes. Reading notes, probably you use it for like xylophones and those things, but rhythm is especially important.
Essential, yeah. So I just did this the other day. So one of the first things I can do, most children, even if they don't really read yet, I can show them $1. I go, oh, that's money. It doesn't matter that, but it's a $1. And then I'll show them quarters. Here's 4 quarters. This is this many, this is the same thing. So I have $1 or I have 4 quarters, and that helps them get the idea that we're going to break a whole note down to quarter notes,
right? And
why we call it the same thing. And I'll sometimes say like a quart of milk is, smaller than the big gallon heavy one. And there's 4 of those. So just to get that concept across. So subdivision is the primary hurdle of, and what a pulse is. We're calling this pulse our quarters. So 4 of these are going to make up one big whole note. And I tell them about the reason we usually use quarters is it's closer to our heartbeat, trying to hit a whole note, only thinking the beat 1 of every measure. It's very difficult. So they get that. And the other part is, if they don't quite get that breaking it, I think in circle, and I can even do this, but here at this point, if the circle is going around, they're going to hit that same part, and there's your pulse.
Right.
So getting the pulse and be able to subdivide it is the main hurdle, and there are a lot of different ways to try and get there, even just to walk with them. Let's walk, and we get the idea of what the pace is, what their pace is.
Because basically when we play rhythm, those are just sounds subdivided on a timeline. So in time, and then when you walk, you're walking in time, right? So you can dance, you can walk, you can just go faster, slower still. I don't understand that. There are several books, and I always found that it is very, very funny to read that in books that are supposed to teach music, right? That 1 beat is 1 second. I was like, no, it's not 1 second. It could even be 1 minute. Who knows, right? So it can be 30 seconds. Depending how fast, how slow you go, right? It's just like 1 out of many,
right?
So I just say, I
don't
get that kind of definition, like, that's 1 quarter, 1 second. No. I read it in books, and I was like, why do they write that thing? Why do they give wrong information to students, right?
And you wonder how that person got to be in the position that they're writing the book.
We don't know. That's a mystery, right? That's a mystery. But what I do usually for rhythm, and I don't know if you use certain things, is that I let them write their own rhythm. I let my students write their own rhythm. I noticed that even very young students, when they are 3, right, or 4, if you use index cards, flashcards, and then you say, okay, this is like I don't call it 4/4 measure, but it is a 4/4 measure. And then you write a kind of a whole note in there. And you say very long, and then they stay for a very long time there, right? And they can play that. And then I present them the quarter notes, half notes, 8 notes, 16 notes. And you know, and then at one point we start mixing the up the values, and after all this process, so I let them write their own index cards with their own rhythm, and there has to be 4, right? You have to count 4. You count 4 on your fingers. If it is a very long, we don't have space for anything else, and they combine that then on the, you know, on the piano, like they combine the different index cards. They play their own music with any kind of notes, because notes are not important yet. So do you do something similar with your students like that? They
As a matter of fact, yeah. So I almost had this published. I lived in Cincinnati, and that's where the playing card company is. There's Bicycle Playing Cards and American Play. That's all the same company. It's all in Cincinnati. But so instead I have I printed out on business cards. You can print your own business cards using a music software program. I wrote, I'd like say 3 quarter notes, 3 sets of double 8th notes, 3 sets of single 8th notes with an 8th rest. So every one of them is a single beat. And here's quarter note, and then I add in new ones, and I mix them up. I say, okay, I'm writing a new song as I shuffle them, and they get to pick out the first note. And we put it down, and so I'll put down 4 to understand, just get the idea of here's our 4. But also I'll have the whole stack. They only get 1 at a time, and it helps in sight reading rhythms, and it helps in understanding time. So I put 1 down, we start, and then there's a quarter rest in between while I put the next one down. So we talk about 2/4 time. We talk about, well, 3/4 time, 4/4 time. What does that bottom number mean? And they say, a quarter note? No, let's try it again. So, and any kid who's studied with me understands why that is 2/4 time versus 4/4 time. What is, you know, and how there can be 3/8 time. That one really helps it stick, because that bottom note changes. There's 3/8 notes. That's all there is. 3/8 notes. So so I use my rhythm cards, and I have it separated into I just have colored hair bands, but there's a white belt, yellow belt, orange belt, red belt, and black belt for the more difficult rhythms, which percussionists would really get into, you know, very difficult rhythms. So and I'll just keep track of where a person is, and if they are inspired by trying to get the next level, I can make it a deal, or I don't even mention it. You know, depending on how the person is. So I find it really helpful for the visual aid, and to make it interchangeable, like you said. They can write their own, or they can mix up, and they get to pick the first card. I say, don't look at it. And they put it down, and, you know, and then we flip it over and say, okay, 1, 2, there you go. And
so who needs a method book for that, right? So every teacher can adapt those things to their students. I don't know, yesterday I had a little one, and so the hair chords, you know, with the left hand, the playing chords is still a little bit of struggle. So we changed the piece in the book instead of accompanying the piece with a chord. So I said, just play the thumb, because it's the same note anyway, right? Just play the thumb on this note, and let's learn this one skill, you know, just playing together with both hands, the melody and one of the
you're still getting fingers. The main thing across.
She's getting the main skill, which is like connecting the right hand while lifting the left and repeating the same note. And instead of playing the chords, because she's still working on that, we are just like you know, modifying the piece. And we were talking the other day, right, when we had this pre-interview, that I used to really cut and paste pieces at times in order to get the student to practice that piece, to have a beautiful experience with the piece, but then not to force progresses when students are not ready at that point, right? So it's a kind of a sort of an organic way of teaching music.
It really is.
So now, how would you wish your students would practice, and how do they actually practice?
Haha.
Yeah.
What I, especially at the young age, I give the students what I call mashed potato exercises. And it's the very things we were talking about at the beginning of this. So I want them to be able to do some simple stuff. They don't have to sit there with drumsticks at the drum pad, looking at the music. They can just do it in their mashed potatoes at dinner. Obviously, I tell this is not really something I want you to play in your potato, but you could play in your food and still get your practicing in. So I want them to be able to come back with the understanding of what we talk about with enjoying the nice loose approach, and being able to understand moving opposites of each other, or moving incongruent with each other, but at different rhythms. So there's 3 different levels right there. So if I'm thinking, okay, this is the perfect student, I want to know that they've tried away from the drum the ideas. Another thing that I do is, I kind of can't do it here, but I have them step away from the drum and walk, put their hands down and walk up until the drumsticks are at the playing spot, and they realize how far away they are from the drum. And that was like a piano. If I'm going to play piano. Okay, I'm right here. I really need to be relaxed and be here. So that's another thing that is I can tell if they're working on it, if they come in and they've got space.
Yeah, do that, so that's what would you like them to do? But do parents understand that? Like, I have the impression at times that parents think that they will come to piano lesson and go home and play the piano right away nicely without any effort, which is not how it works, right? Because I give some exercises, we have the videos, so we have a set of instructions, I write the book, we have write notes to the parents, I send them home, I expect them to practice every day, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I ask them, I tell the parents, usually I have that quick interchange between lessons, and I'll say, okay, this is what I want them to do. And just, if they do each one of these 5 times, and I try and give them, depending on age, how long they're going to be able to concentrate. But I'll say, here's what we're working on. And if they can come in next week with such and such, the first 3 lines of this at a tempo that we pre-agree on, then that's all I want. So if they come in with more than that, then I'm elated. Right? Yeah, high five. Yeah. But if they come in and they barely remember the first measure, then I know that the parents aren't involved. And I tell the parents, I tell the kid, of course, during the lesson, the student, during the lesson, okay, we need to work on this week as we finish up our lesson. But I tell the parent, okay, this is what I'm asking them. And at the early parts of setting up lessons, I make sure that the parent isn't responsible for the kids learning, but the parent is responsible for encouraging.
Yes.
Because they aren't going to know that commitment yet.
Yeah, there's not. I don't believe we can push kids. I don't believe in that, because it's horrible to do, right? To push kids to practice. You have to practice as well. But on the other hand, you have to be encouraging, remind them, be supportive. That is what I expect parents to do at home. Like, I'll stay there and then say, oh, that's so beautiful. You played so wonderful. Like, why don't you do that again?
Yeah. Or show me what you can do.
Right.
And and then if they mess up, they're aware that, I could do that better, and they're gonna, maybe, you never know. But that's I tell the parents to ask them, show me what you can do.
Yes.
And then they're gonna go, oh, what did I learn? Let's see. And it's putting it in their brain right there.
Right. So, it is so important to have that kind of a supportive environment at home, especially at the beginning. What are your thoughts about like the environment that parents create for their children? I mean, obviously kids cannot wish to play in a philharmonic if they never went to a concert in their entire life. Like, I don't even know. I just only listen to rock music. I only know that, and I want to play that. That's it.
So, that's all you know.
Right. Do you give suggestions to your students to go and listen to concerts and or kind of,
I do. So early on, again, I start where they are. And so I know that this parent, is a child of the 90s, in this case. And so I sent them home with, because they're still fairly early on,
right.
I sent them home with playing a rhythm, but to play along with like a song from the 90s that's at a pace that I want them to play it. Instead of the metronome at 80, yes. I found a piece and the parents can go, oh, really? You're playing that? That's so cool. So this can help the encouragement there.
So encourage the student and the parents as well, right?
Yes. And then I can start sending other tunes home that are not just something they listened to a long time ago.
But bribing the parents, right?
I am.
Yes.
Yeah, because then I'll put in, Joe Morello, the Dave Brubeck drummer. Right. Okay, I'll put in something like that, and so okay, try this as we go, and then we can say, okay, now here is, there are some recordings of early stereo recordings were percussion, bing bang boom. So they would, to show the stereo, and they would have people on, you need a mic. So those recordings, and they're just silly songs, but then they oh my gosh, listen, that's different percussion. That's all percussion, and so they can open their ears, and then I can go into.
Then you go back to Tchaikovsky, Beethoven.
Yeah, the Turkish March area of Symphony Number 9. A Beethoven Symphony Number 9. It's like, oh, cool, yeah, and I can explain what the what they.
Yes, I did something similar to in a class that taught at the university. It was like. It was music appreciation class, and I had obviously no majors, no music major in that class. So I started from the music that we listen today, and I went backwards, like so that they basically could find a connection between the pop music that they were listening and the music written by Mozart, Beethoven, and Bach. Backwards. So because then they got, by going backwards, they could just try to find the roots of what they were listening.
Yeah,
I don't know. Dominant chords, Mozart was already using them, right?
Yeah. That's a great idea. I love it. I had to teach it, and I just kind of went. I did get to play John Cage's 4 minutes 33 seconds.
Yes.
the short version,
Right. Yeah.
But I just kind of went in order, but I also would talk about where things are now. But I love that idea. If I'm in that situation again, I would.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that how should I teach those students who really don't care about music of the Baroque period? So how should I bring them to care about that? So I thought, let's go backwards because that's
where they're at.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, like you, right? Like you start where the students is at that moment, and then you add more information to what they already know. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to steal that. I hope you know.
You're welcome to steal anything. So thank you so much for being with me here today, and
truly a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And so if you want to have information, I'm talking to the guys who are watching this video now. If you want to have information about Dr. Martin Weir, I have the link to his website down below in the description. And well, thank you again. And
thank you.
Bye.
You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye. You too. Bye.